Welcome, welcome, one and all, to another episode of the WITNESS TITANIC podcast. You know the spiel at this point. It is the first inquiry into the sinking of the RMS Titanic in over a century. My name is James Penca, your chairman of sorts, as I interview witnesses of her great story, from modern Titanic experts to survivors of the sinking. Through their testimony, I hope we can all witness Titanic ourselves. Today, we have a wonderful witness to call to the stand. We've been trying to get this together for a little bit, and we met recently in person, and now we're going to talk here, and we're going to see each other again later this week to go to a Titanic exhibit together. It's just great. But before we call our witness to the stand, I just have two things to mention. One, I wanted to thank everybody for the wonderful, kind comments about the Harold Bride episodes. Had a lot of fun doing those. But I have a major mistake that I have to apologize for. I was called out by many people for saying that we lose most of our body heat through the top of our heads. That is apparently a myth, and I repeated it, and it's just so funny because I spend so much time on this podcast dispelling myths about Titanic, and then I just said this one, and the response to it was very much how I sound when I'm telling people that Titanic myths are too often repeated. Everyone's like, please stop saying that. It's not true. Where did this come from? And that's how I feel about most Titanic things. So I apologize for not Googling that ahead of time. I've heard it so much, I thought it was real. Oh well, we are all susceptible to these old myths. Anyway, let's get into the episode. As you know, we interview witnesses of Titanic's great story from 1912 to today. We've had a few episodes in a row with Harold Bride all the way back from 1912. Today, we're going modern. We have a modern witness. You don't have to have seen Titanic with your own two eyes to witness Titanic. In my book, as long as you've spent enough time with her, I think you have your own point of view of the disaster, and makes you a worthwhile person to be called into an inquiry. And this person is certainly one of those people. So today's witness was the co-founder of the Swiss Titanic Society. He's worked on many Titanic projects, including one that is very important to this podcast because it's one of the books I've probably mentioned the most, which is this one right here, Guide to the Crew of Titanic. We talk about it a lot when we have a crew member on. But this is my favorite thing about today's witness. I looked up last night, I was just looking up information about them so I could do this intro, and I came across a post on Encyclopedia Titanica. People were talking about this book. Someone was asking, should I get this book? Is it good? And every comment was like, it's so good. You have to get this book. You have to get this book. And one of the comments from just a random person said that today's witness is a well-known and highly respected researcher of Titanic's people. His work is uniformly first-rate. And I couldn't agree more. So I now call to the stand our witness for today, Günter Bäbler. Günter, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's a long intro, and I hope I didn't embarrass you. I know you get embarrassed by me talking about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's, funny enough, I picked up the book from the shelf today because maybe we're going to talk about it and you need to look up things. And I never noticed until today the nice word that is on the cover that they put on because, I somehow, at least the soft cover edition, I wasn't aware of the kind. So I'm not used to that. I do my stuff and...
A must for anyone interested in the Titanic. I completely agree. I was sent your book by Matt DeWinkler from Titanic Honor and Glory years ago when we were writing things about the ship for the project. And he was like, well, you have to read this book. If you're going to do anything with the crew, you got to read this book. And then it sat on my shelf for a while. And then of all places to read it, I finally picked it up when I was working on a cruise ship. And I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So I was at sea reading this book I was a crew member at sea reading about the crew of Titanic. And it really was the best place to read it because I'm around crew people all day when we work on those ships, and just seeing how different things are, and also seeing how similar things are. But that's something we'll talk about in a second. Well, first of all, please tell everybody where you're from. Where are you right now?
I'm at home, Zurich, Switzerland. That's yeah, landlocked country, far away from the sea, as you might know, and yeah, that's basically my home base for all my Titanic work.
We've had a very international season of Witness Titanic. We had uh, Mike Brady from Australia. We had Ricardo Rossi from Italy, and now we have you here. I don't think I've had any Americans on yet this year, but maybe next year. So before we talk more about what you've done in the Titanic world, more about this book, I do want to ask, as I usually ask people, is what is your earliest memory of Titanic? What do you remember? What sparked your interest? What it was about it, or was it the movie? Was it not the movie, but a movie? Was it a book? Was it a person? How did you get into Titanic?
It's hard to remember these days because I don't really remember it. This is how my brain works, but I hear myself, or I told the story so many times by now that I kind of cannot remember what I remember the story that I always tell. And it's so in my case, it was back in 1982. I was at school, and my teacher or our teacher spoke for whatever reasons about Titanic. And I thought it's fascinating. He just told the story in short. I don't know what brought him to do so, but he talked about it, and I just thought to be the clever kid and asking him back, and why didn't the people climb onto the iceberg? And
Great question.
so, and he had, of course, no straight answer. So that kept my boyish interest alive over the years. But I have not that many memories of like the discovery of the wreck that was afterwards. Not, I remember to have read about it, but I not really started like collecting and researching until I was in my late teens.
Was there a moment in your experience with Titanic? Because that sounds like a lot of people's first. A lot of people first got into Titanic because of a school project, or they had to read A Night to Remember as a school thing, or in my case, I saw the movie or played the Adventure Out of Time, the video game. Was there a moment where you felt like it shifted into this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Like I'm going to really devote my time to this ship?
Well, there was never a moment when I really decided that this is gonna be along my whole life, but it just happened. So basically, I had to write as a teenager some school thesis, and I picked the Titanic, and in my yeah, as a kid, I thought I know pretty much. It was this kind of arrogant kid. Then I thought,
Of
oh, I know
course.
almost
I know
everything.
everything. Yeah,
Uh,
we've
and
all said that.
yeah, and I'm far away from that today. But back then, and I did some digging for that work. Went to the newspaper archive and looked up some historic newspapers. And I just thought I'm not yet finished, so I kept going a bit. And for some odd reasons, I got in contact with several researchers that are still well known, like well, George Behe and
Hmm.
Ron Lynch. And I was in contact with Walter Lord, and especially Walter. He was I thought he knows everything because I almost knew everything. I thought, but
Yeah.
he must know everything for sure. So I asked him some questions, and kind of based on those newspaper reports that included some Swiss survivor accounts, and so he kept asking me back, and he was so thrilled about the information that I shared with him that I suddenly realized, hey, the story is not finished yet. So there is more to discover if somebody like Walter Lord is interested in what I did, which was not a
Yeah.
big deal at the time. But this was well before internet, in the 80s, in the early 90s. So yeah, so that kind of woke me up that I've noticed. Okay, there is so much to discover and to unveil, and there is like every day I come across topics that I think, hey, why didn't somebody pick up that topic and did some research on it?
Yeah. And after all this, did you ever discover why didn't anyone climb onto the iceberg?
Well, I
I
think it's
mean,
pretty
they
difficult.
could have.
Yeah, I think without tools and without actually
Yeah,
seeing the iceberg at
right.
night, it's
And it's one of those things that goes in the category of Murdoch ramming the iceberg head on. Like, I guess they could have done something crazy like that, but who would have actually thought of it? I will say one of the coolest things that has ever been said on this podcast was you just now referring to Walter Lord as Walter, just saying his first name. That's just that you knew Walter Lord, or you were in contact with him, is very cool. Like, that is a Titanic legend, and you are on a first name basis.
Yeah, this is funny. This is something that I learned through him. He spoke. It's like a historic handshake. Now, if I talk about it, that he talked about this first name basis that I wasn't aware until Walter basically mentioned that he was with Edith Rosenbaum or Edith Russell on a first name base, which meant a lot to
Right?
him. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
so I learned about that, that this is not taken for granted, or at least it wasn't in those days. And so when he suddenly changed from Walter Lord and signed the letters with Walter, and I visited him a couple of times, so that's yeah.
That's
I
really
never thought
special.
of it
Well,
like this, but yeah, you're right.
yeah,
It's something
and you
that
know what? To continue it on, it's an honor to be on a first name basis with you. So
oh,
it continues. It continues. So okay, you wrote this crew book, and from what I understand, having read it, you initially were just trying to put together a list of the entire crew just for basic research purposes, and you found how difficult that can be, how little is known about the crew. So what do you remember what your inspiration was with this book? How it came about? Did I say it correctly? How did this book come about? Is the
yeah,
simple way to ask.
it's one of these moments where I basically just grabbed the subject. I, I have not a specific interest in the cruise. I didn't try to do that list because other people did that. I tried to understand how the ship was organized. So uh, it's basically now the book is a place to go where you want to understand the structure of how the crew worked. And it was back in 2010 when I got an email. It was a random person just writing to me, and uh, young lady, teenager, she asked for her studies. She wants to do, she's communication design, she studies, and she wants to illustrate kind of how the crew was structured into different groups and so on. And I I felt it might help me eventually. So I said, well, if you really, really want to do that, I'm happy to help you. And she did kind of move on pretty quick because, of course, they're under time pressure in the at the universities. So she was moving on, and I actually picked up the book. It's this is what she did out of it. It's kind of one of the rarest Titanic books these days. So this is like her result, and she did some graphics, to show the ratio. Probably it's not coming up right now when I'm looking for it, but she just tried to illustrate, like how many percent of the people survived, how many of which group, and I just try to divide them into smaller groups to make the statistics more to get more information out of it. And of course she moved on. She published her thing back then, or her thesis, and I just was stuck with the topic, and I kept moving on, and I just tried to understand basically what everybody was doing on board, because there are a lot of job titles that do not really, or didn't really ring a bell at the time. Maybe there were some surprises when you read the book about what
So
people
many.
did, and it was, at the end, it was kind of a little challenge to myself. I had this one person left in the engineering department, and I just wanted to know what his work was, and this, a lot was just a lot of reading, doing the research, reading, trying to figure out what people said at inquiries and also from other sources, also looking into the salaries and so on to understand like the tipping and so on. And there was this one guy left, and I just as a little fun project to myself, I said, well, I want to try that guy. It's going to cost me money, and all I want back is the money for that one guy, because, this is such a uninteresting topic. I didn't think that any books going to sell. It was book on demand in German first, and by more of a coincidence, it became into the English one. I just figured out that last guy, and it was just fun basically to know who was doing what on board, and there were just a lot of side findings, like who cleaned the ship. It's kind of, you think, okay, well, the cook is probably cleaning the oven. That makes sense, but at the end, I finally realized, hey, I can clean the whole ship. I would know who, if something is not clean, who I had to call on that.
Who's not doing their job today.
So it's one of the many findings.
Do you remember what the job was of that last person that you had to spend a lot of time tracking down?
It was one of the extra engineers, what the extra stands for.
Extra engineer. That's it.
It's like extra, no, it was like extra fifth junior engineer, something like that. And
right.
And I had an idea, and I cannot prove the case, but I looked into Megantic and Laurentic, the almost identical ships, and tried to find crew lists of these ships, and see if there was an extra guy on the Laurentic with the steam turbine, and there was. So that's my guess, that you needed that on the Laurentic and not on the Megantic, and so that's because there was basically no job left for him. So he had some extra duty, which I don't know in detail, of course, but he must have something to do with the turbine for sure. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, those two ships, one had a turbine, one didn't, so the company could see how is this new turbine technology helping or hurting the ship, and then it helped so that it was on Titanic, and so there's an extra, fifth junior, second, third, fourth, fifth engineer, the most complicated titles. It literally, one person's title will be assistant junior second engineer, something really complicated. It's very, very interesting. And it's a confusing topic because we're talking about a department that's pretty brand new. They're still working out the kinks of who does what in an engineering department. It's not been too long since engineering departments were needed on ships. So I'm sure they'd be a little more organized today, but who knows? Speaking of today, again, having worked on cruise ships and read your book while working on one, it was very fun to compare. And one thing that you point out in your book that I literally circled like this with a pencil because it was so spot on with what I was experiencing at the time that I was reading, is that many of the passenger-facing crew people, stewards and bellboys and lift operators and such, they very much relied on tips. They were paid a little bit by the White Star Line, but they probably got the majority of their income from the passengers. And the reason that I circled it is because that's still how it is today. The cruise ship companies almost criminally underpay their staff, and the staff have to rely on tips from passengers. As anybody who's ever worked at a restaurant or ever worked for tips, the danger in that is because it's fully voluntary. The passengers don't have to tip you if they either don't think you deserve it, which is crazy, or they just don't tip well. And you point out in your book perfectly that this is great for the White Star Line, not just because they don't have to pay their staff that much, but it also protects the White Star Line in case the voyage is light. If it's a part of the season where there's just not a lot of people traveling, if the ship is less filled than they expected, the White Star Line isn't losing money, the staff is losing money. and that's still how they do it 100 years later. But yeah, reading this book was so much fun on the ship. One of my favorite parts of it is you list in order every single role on the ship and how much money they made per month. And of course, at the very top is Captain Smith. He makes 104 pounds a month, a little more than 104 pounds a month. And at the very bottom is the restaurant page boy, who makes 1.5 pounds a month. But in between is every single position on the ship. And what makes it so interesting is that you're actually seeing them next to each other when you usually wouldn't. Like I wrote a couple down just to bring them up. But First Officer Murdoch and a head waiter make almost the same amount of money. And that's something that you would never expect. Or the second and third class pursers made more than Second Officer Lighthauler, which, again, I wouldn't have expected. Harold Bride, who we just talked about in our last episode, made less than leading fireman Barrett, who we talked about a couple episodes before. I would have expected them to be switched. I don't know. I guess I would have assumed Bride was more educated than a fireman, a wireless operator, but he made less. He was a junior operator. And then Frederick Fleet, who opened this season of Witness Titanic, he made less than the assistant glass washer. So there's just all these. It's more interesting to see them side by side. So I'm just so grateful for the work you did on this book, because it really opens your eyes to the crew. In the book, you said that you tried to sleep the 4 hours on, 4 hours off thing. Am I making that up? You did that. Do you have any memory of what that was like? You explain in the book that it was difficult, but to get an understanding of what it was like to be a member of the crew. They would never do this today on a cruise ship, at least, make someone sleep 4 hours on, 4 hours off, because it sounds awful. What is your memory of doing that, trying to live like a crewman?
Yeah, I picked Vauxhall at the time to be like his sleep and watch pattern, and yet the problem is you can't sleep when you have to sleep. Even though you're exhausted, but so I tried it for a week, which is probably what such a crossing was. I did all the math, with the time shift, like changing of the
wow. Yeah,
the
you of
time
course you
zone.
did it to an extreme degree. Yeah.
Yeah, of course you have to, and I just wanted to experience it, and I struggled really over the last days, because I didn't, I couldn't watch and just, I couldn't stand on the balcony and just watch out. So I was just being active in a way that I was on my legs most of the time, so not sitting, going for a little walk. It took a week of my vacation because you can't do it otherwise.
No.
I went to a concert. Actually, Fran just reminded me a couple of weeks ago that we went to a concert, and I took it in a way that it was during my sleep shift that I went to the concert, because this is what they did. They wouldn't go at each possibility to sleep. So sometimes they stayed awake during possible sleep times. Of course, you can't sleep 4 times a day for 4 hours. So I went through my sleep time on a concert, and he stayed overnight after the concert, and he wanted to go to bed. I said, no, I have to stay awake for 2 more hours. And
You're on Titanic now, buddy.
So he stayed up with me. He thought it was fun. So we picked up a beer, which we wouldn't do if we have been on watch, of course. But we walked around the block for like 2 more hours, because I said I cannot go sleeping now, because I need to stay awake, and then I have 4 hours later. So it was terrible. I did some tests, like some computer, like with the cell phone, some games, where you can write
Hmm.
down, like memorizing things and acting.
Sure, like your cognitive
Yeah,
abilities. Yeah.
and I noticed considerably. I wouldn't need to look up my notes from the time, but it was really fatigue became a topic after 4 or 5 days. Like the score of games that I actually should have performed better because I was getting used to it. I trained a little bit before I started with the this test, but yeah, during I should have getting better, and I got worse by with concentration and so on, which is
Wow.
not surprising. But I just wanted to do that. It's one of these crazy things that I'm just from time to time doing.
It's a great experiment that you did, and maybe something for me to try one day for a little bit of insight.
Yeah, then we
Very
can have
cool.
talks afterwards.
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll compare notes. Very fun. That's commitment right there, folks. Is there anything you think you want to do in the future regarding Titanic? Whether it's a book or a certain topic of research, is there something that's always been on your mind to get into?
Uh, Not really. There are so many things where usually I end up with doing articles for our magazine because I feel okay, that's an easy way to publish it. So it's kind of people can look it up. It's very often very odd things I come across. To give you a sample, once I bought a photo at auction of a group of passengers on the Carpathia, like Carpathia passengers on of that very trip, and I wanted to label them, and I was kind of frustrated to that there is no place to go where I can just look up because at the back of the card it was written there kind of last names, but I wanted to have the full name, like labeling the photo. So I ended up doing uh, the reconstructing the passenger list of Carpathia. You will find it on ET now. It's not updated, but just to have a place to go to understand or to look up the names. What were the people's names and how old were they? Just the basic information, not going into the biographies. And then there was this one guy or a couple. I think it was Lozzolo, Italian name, that I couldn't figure out. They were somehow from Los Angeles, and it took me a long time. And I finally figured out that this was not the real name. He was a guy who was going to be deported from the U.S. His name was actually Schiffman, and he fled to the U.S. He was like speculating with property in Berlin. He lost millions at the time, and he was finally arrested. Then later, funny enough, in Switzerland here, and brought to Germany, and it was the biggest court case in Germany before World War One. That it was enormous amount of money, and he just happened to be a passenger on Carpathia. And
Wow.
so I wrote his biography for our magazine, which was fun. Uh, and because at some point he claimed that he will sue White Star Line for the loss of Titanic because he lost business by not returning on time to Europe, and
Wow.
a very special guy. And I was fascinated by his story, but remember, I only wanted to label that one photo. That
Yeah.
that was like a thing that I'm doing every day. Keeping my archive up to date and want to label things properly, and ending up first doing the passenger list of Carpathia, which took months, of course, and then this one guy that I couldn't find, or there are a few more, but this I thought I could solve it, and I was by coincidence I found him, and that opened a complete new chapter and kept me busy for many weeks. So this is how I stumble into things and endless stories that have not been covered.
And that's why we keep coming back to it. That's we say this every episode, basically, that there's just always something new. There's always a brand new topic that you never thought of, and that's why Walter Lord was interested in what you were doing. We will always be here. People always say, if I say that I have a Titanic podcast or something, they'll say, "Is there really still something to say about Titanic?" Oh yeah. Just listen. You'll get it.
It's the more you study it, the less you feel certain about things. I was just 2 weeks ago. I was with two teenagers in an exhibition that I'm involved in Rosenheim, Germany, and I was walking with them through the exhibition. And hey, they were teenagers. They would accept a straight answer, but I realized that I'm kind of not in the position any longer that I can a simple question give a simple answer, because you have all these ifs and maybe, or
Right.
and in a way I miss those days when I was innocent young me, when I just thought that yeah, this is the answer.
Yeah, I know everything. We kind of, I think Titanic people always, they go through that, the initial brush with Titanic that becomes, I know everything about Titanic. This is the answer. This is the answer. And then, yeah, the more you learn, the less you know is a phrase I've heard.
But
The
it's
more,
great that you reach that point as well, because there are
yeah,
people my age that haven't reached that,
yeah,
honestly, and you just watch them and what they're doing and think, okay, so they are my age, but they behave or do what I did as a teenager. So, but hey, everybody should be happy with what they're
yeah.
doing. Yeah,
We're all just enjoying
yeah,
the same ship. Which, whenever there's some Titanic disagreements, I'm always like, we're all the same person. We should all be getting along. So, last topic, and then we'll wrap this up. You and I were discussing some interesting things about the ship last time we saw each other, and a topic you brought up that we can just talk about briefly, and maybe this won't even make it into the episode, depending on how long it is. And that is the topic of the word unsinkable. I know you have a certain interest in that word. I mean, my listeners all know Titanic is associated with the word unsinkable. The story is that she was called unsinkable, and then of course she sank, and the newspapers really grabbed onto that. They still do. Clickbait articles, anything with Titanic, it'll be the unsinkable Titanic. It's synonymous with Titanic. But you have a different view, of course, based on research. But so, what can you tell us about the word unsinkable and how we're not quite seeing it right?
okay, I think you're going to open a complete new episode here. But
Yeah.
okay, let me try to be short on that. So I rarely used the word in the past, because I realized from what I read about it that this is not quite the way it was. So basically, using the word unsinkable today, I kind of claim that whoever uses it, and that includes also Titanic people, they don't know what they're talking about. Because, first of all, it is one of the main ingredients, I agree, complete on that, of the story. You have iceberg, unsinkable, maiden voyage, all these things. So it is part of Titanic's story, I agree. But you should also agree that basically every ship at the time was unsinkable, and a lot of unsinkable ships went down. Some, or at least one, not even survived the launch, being an unsinkable ship, but capsized right after launch. So uh, it was not that special. And this is one of the things I understood with Titanic. When you're a kid, you believe that this is the most beautiful ship and so on, and then you realize there were other ships as well, and you think they were the most famous people on board, and then you realize no, it was just an average group of people traveling on that ship. And just because we know some names on Titanic doesn't mean that they were really the absolute VIPs at the time. So again, unsinkable is a very unfortunate term, obviously, for a ship, and it goes back centuries. The problem is that it's actually a technical term that was absolutely normal to be used. So even after Titanic, in German shipping engineers, they talked about unsinkable ships very commonly because they knew what it meant. It was a technical term that get out of control in the hands of the press, people, even today, and it makes like people from 1912 look like foolish. How can they be so
Right.
stupid to believe, like both engineers and private people, that this ship can, no, it wasn't meant. And I always bring as a comparison, like if you go and buy a new cell phone, it has a scratch-proof display, and we all know it's a lie because it's not to construct anything like that. It's just
Right.
a condition. You need to define under what circumstances your display is gonna survive any crash or scratching of certain diamonds or whatever. It's a question of
Right.
definition, and you always need to keep that in mind. So using the term unsinkable without explaining what it meant, uh, because in fact Titanic was unsinkable according to the definition, but it didn't mean that cannot go down.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
It's maybe another good comparison would be if you go to the store and you buy a stainless steel
yeah,
pan or a stainless steel fence, or something that's going to get wet. It's stainless steel. It will never
no,
rust,
yeah,
but they rust.
yeah,
It's just it's a way to sell something, but it's also, yeah, a standard of making something, not necessarily not meant to be taken literally. My last question for you, and this one's super easy and quick. I always ask my modern witnesses this question, and that is, just to cleanse the palate of Titanic talk for an hour. Do you have another hobby or another passion, another thing that you do that is not Titanic related, not ship related? What's something that makes you happy other than Titanic?
well, there are a lot of things that are kind of Titanic related. I love going onto cemeteries, but of course it's related in most cases to search for Titanic related people.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably wouldn't count really as being non-Titanic
Sure.
quickly. So there is one thing that I, by coincidence, ended up start doing like 3 years ago, and it's I'm somebody who's not interested in sports. I don't do sports myself, but I somehow discovered that there are bike races in Zurich every Tuesday night in summertime in an open stadium, and it's just a feel good place. It's
Oh,
very down
great.
to earth. It's it's an open air event, so only when the weather is nice in summertime in the evening, spending a nice evening with a bratwurst and a beer, and it's just so down to earth, very casual. People enjoying it. It's like a dozen of races every evening with kids races, professional ones, different kind of races. So I enjoyed it a lot going there with friends, and some of my friends couldn't believe when I told them what I'm doing now because I'm not into sport. So and then they came along and they understood this is a fantastic
Yeah,
event.
it's the
Yeah,
experience of being there. That's how a lot of people. I'll get them to go to a baseball game. Baseball is not for everybody, but what is for everybody is going to the park, having a hot dog, hearing the music, talking with your friends while a bunch of guys play a game that you have no interest in. The energy, the smells, the sounds of baseball is very romantic in the United States, and so it's the experience of these bike races more than necessarily the sport itself.
yeah, but you become hooked on it because you start to getting the known the different race types.
Hmm.
Where it's more about muscles, more about being quick, more tactics, and so on. So that's interesting. Uh, the bicyclists you start to know after a while, of course, because they're coming back every week. So
Yeah.
it's just it opens a complete new world. And the interesting thing is that this stadium was built in 1912. So there is a little bit of
Of
a Titanic
course.
connection, but it's the oldest sports stadium in Switzerland that is still regularly used. Uh, and, having a historic interest, of course, I looked up, hey, when was it actually opened in 1912? It was in summer, not in April.
Mm.
But then you start looking up on like eBay, hey, there are some postcards that might be nice. And you just say, no, 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 you don't want to start something like Titanic again. It's pure enjoyment going there, having great evenings with friends, and yeah, not doing like the same thing again and start something big.
That's great. I like that. That's a great way to get away from Titanic. All right, I have asked every question I can think of. Günter, thank you so much for joining us as a witness. This was invaluable testimony as always. And luckily, I'll see you in a few days. We'll go to a Titanic exhibit and we'll see how it goes. But this was great. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you very much, and hope that everybody enjoyed it.
And with that, the witness withdrew. Wasn't that a great little interview? Günter's so wonderful to talk to. We go back a few years. I forgot to mention we met because I used to write articles for his Swiss Titanic magazine, mostly about the Titanic Honor and Glory project. He would translate it to German and then put it in the magazine. So that's how we know each other from years ago. And we met in person recently in Los Angeles, and we're going to see each other again this week. For my witness tier patrons, I do bonus testimony, as you all should know by now. We do bonus testimony for each witness that the witness tier patrons get to enjoy. And this week, I think, depending on how things go, the bonus testimony might just be me sharing Günter and I's our thoughts on a Titanic exhibit that we're going to go to, and then we'll let you know if you should go see it if it comes to your town. And folks, before we go, I'd like to give you a little update on where we're going in the next few weeks and the next few months of Witness Titanic. We are nearing the end of season 2, as I'm deciding to call it, kind of winging it as we go, whether we have seasons or not. We did season 1 that ended heading into the holidays, and then we kicked up season 2 back in April during the anniversary. And in season 2, we've had, this is our 14th episode of season 2, and I've got 2 more planned for you before the holidays this year and before we take a little break. Those last 2 episodes, much like how we ended season 1 with a watch party of James Cameron's Titanic, this season we're going to end with a watch party of 1958's A Night to Remember, the movie that very much sparked a lot of the Titanic mania that has been seen in the world between that and Walter Lord's book. So we will be doing a little watch party there for our last 2 episodes of this season. That'll take us into Christmas. I may or may not do a little holiday mini episode, just wrapping up the season. And then I plan on taking January and February off to just do some research for season 3, to potentially start writing a book, and to rest. And then in March, we will kick off season 3, and that will lead us into the anniversary in April, which at the moment, the plan is to have another anniversary, a Titanic anniversary event on the Queen Mary like we did last year. And if that does happen, I will let you know. I want to do some live recordings of Witness Titanic episodes on the Queen Mary. So maybe if you want to, you can make the trip out, stay on the Queen Mary for the weekend, see all the Titanic lectures and events, and maybe attend a live taping recording of a Witness Titanic episode. So that's the plan. 2 more episodes after this, featuring A Night to Remember, and then a little bit of a break, and then we'll get into season 3. Thank you all so much for listening. Thanks to my patrons for supporting this project. On behalf of Peanut, who was the hit of the last episode, she was the star of episode 33. She's in the other room asleep, thank God. She sends her regards to her legions of fans out there. I'm James Penca. I'm your chairman. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time when we reconvene our investigation into the sinking of the RMS Titanic.